All right, looks like we're going to start. Recording is happening, just so everybody knows this is being recorded. So that people who couldn't come can listen later. It will not, your faces won't be on it. And one of the things I ask is if you want to make comments, just put it in the chat box, and I'll talk about that in a second. But we are being recorded. If you have any issues with technology, Silver Lace, Rebecca, and Leslie are here to help. So just send them a chat, and you can, when you go to the participants, you'll see that they're the hosts. Don't send to me because I cannot help you with technology. But what you should do is send to me any comments along the way. Really welcome your comments. And I will respond to your comments. If they're short, I can read them. If they're too long, then I'll read them later. But I love responding to comments as we go, so feel free to send that. All right, I'm gonna jump in. I want to especially, there's so many people I would want to welcome, but I want to do a special welcome to Rabbi Laura Rumpf, who is with us. She's in San Francisco area right now, but she will be in Seattle, and she will be, when I'm retiring October 1st, she will be the new director of Project Kavod. And Rabbi Laura, we are thrilled to have you join the JFS team. So welcome, and you'll be seeing more of Rabbi Laura along the way. And you see Silver Lace just put a note in the box to let her know if you need anything. And I really want to thank upfront Silver Lace and Rebecca and Leslie for all the behind the scenes support to make these things happen. It's really a team effort, and I'm really grateful. So thank you, guys. All right, so let's turn to the topic. We're talking about preparing for the high holidays and what it means to return, because the Hebrew word teshuvah, which was usually translated as repentance, actually literally means return. So what are we returning to? And I thought it was a great metaphor for our lives right now. Like, what are we returning to? What does return even mean? And when I put the topic out there a couple months ago, maybe 2-3 months ago, I actually thought that maybe we would be returning to synagogues for the high holidays and how that would feel. And now we don't know what's going on. I also want to note that people are in very different places. I mentioned this last week. I want to mention it again. People are in very, very different places in terms of their own health, their family's health, jobs, just everything. I mean, emotionally, we're all over the place. And I don't want to make any assumptions that all of us are anywhere. And I think that's part of what today's message is going to be from the text that I'm teaching. We're in a very complicated time, and I also want to acknowledge that what's going on in the world right now. It's hard to even mention one thing, but at JFS, I just have to say, because we are very involved in bringing in Afghani refugees, and it's weighing heavy. I know there's a number of staff people on here today, and it's weighing heavily on all of us, even if we're not on that team. And the support of the community around this topic has been wonderful and appreciated. And it's a scary time. And I was talking to a friend of mine this morning. It's like, why is this like, it's not, I don't know people personally, but this is really weighing on me. I was like, well, it's the Jewish DNA. We're living, we've been through this. We've been the people trying to escape. We know what that feels like, and then there's no way out. And so I want to dedicate today the study to those who are trying to be safe, and to my colleagues who are doing unbelievable work, bringing in people on less than 24 hours notice. And we're just doing remarkable work. So to my colleagues, thank you. And to the community, thank you for your support for all we're doing. All right, so each week, these classes are standing on their own, and they're also building on each other. So if you weren't here last week, don't worry, but I will be referring to some things from last week. And as I said last week, also, I try to teach on a lot of levels at the same time. You know, if you don't get every reference, don't worry about it. You don't have to get every reference to hopefully find these classes meaningful. At the same time, if something comes up that you don't understand and you want to clarify, just put a chat. Okay, I try not to make assumptions, but sometimes I just forget. So don't be shy about putting in a question. I appreciate that. And if you have a question, other people probably have the same question. So last week we looked at the story of Elijah, and we saw that it took time for him to internalize the changes of a profound experience that he had in isolation, and it took. He's still in the process of, at least in the Jewish creative mind, he's still making the transition to applying what he learned in that time. This week we're going to turn, so that was from the Bible. This week we're going to look at a story from the Talmud. Talmud is the basic Jewish text that came after the Bible. It's full of stories. It's full of Jewish law. It's a long conversation. When we say the rabbis, we're talking about the rabbis usually of the Talmud of this period. Talmud was written down as an oral tradition that was written down around the year 600. We don't know exactly, but so you can get a sense of how old it is. But it's really I would say the Talmud is in some ways more of its foundational text than the Bible, because we don't follow the Bible, we follow the interpretation of the Bible, and that you can see that interpretive process start in the Talmud. So the other thing to know about the Talmud is the stories in the Talmud are not to teach facts. I mean, there's no such thing as history at that time, right? This was not a teaching of history. These are stories that are fanciful sometimes, and they're there to teach a lesson. They're not there to teach facts. They're there, like I used to have students say, like, was this true? And I'll say, well, depends what you mean by true, right? It's true with a capital T, but it's not like true factually. That's not the point. That was never the goal. Factual truth is not the goal here. So especially in the stories. So I'm gonna just open us up, and Silver Lace is going to. I'm gonna first of all put this. If anybody wants to look at it on their own, Silver Lace is going to share screen. I'm going to minimize that so I can still see faces, and you could do the same if you want. You can follow if you printed it out. When I sent it earlier, whatever works for you. I just need to see your faces to get some feedback. Although sadly I can't see all your faces at the same time. At some point I might just stop and say I just need to look at all your faces. Yes, Ken, perfect. They're meant to be taken seriously but not literally. That's perfect. And I think it's hard. I think it's not necessarily the Western tradition. We're trying, like, what's the answer kind of thing. The Talmud is not about what's the answer. The Talmud is about what's the question. That's my experience with it. All right, so we're going to pick up a story about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Elazar. He was a 2nd century sage. He was a student of Rabbi Akiba, for those of you who are familiar with Rabbi Akiba. According to legend, he was the author of the Zohar, the basic mystical book, which appeared in like 13th century Spain. Scholars will tell you that he didn't write it. It's clear he didn't write it, but it's attributed to him, and it's attributed to him because of this story in many ways. In this story, he and his son are hiding because the Romans want to kill him, because he spoke negatively about the Romans. They heard about it, and they are after him to kill him. And the temple was destroyed, just to give you some timeline here, 70 CE. And we're now in 2nd century CE. So the temple has been destroyed. The rabbis are trying to preserve some new form of Judaism, or create a new form of Judaism post-destruction of the temple. We pick up the story in the Talmud. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son are hiding in a cave. And for those of you who were here last week, remember Elijah's revelation happened in a cave. All right, so here's the story. And feel free to put comments in as we go. I'll be looking up and back and forth. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Rabbi Elazar went and hid in a cave because their lives were in danger. just like last week, Elijah had to go and hide because his life was in danger. A miracle occurred, and a carob tree was created for them, as well as a spring of water. So they have food and water, so they can sustain themselves. What would they do in the cave? They would remove their clothes and sit covered in sand up to their necks. And they would study Torah all day in that manner. We call this non-embodied study. Everything's in their head. I mean, I think this is so metaphorically so powerful. It's all in their head. Nothing enters the rest of them. And the rabbis, by the way, don't like that. We'll see. At the time of prayer, they would dress, cover themselves with clothes, and pray. And they would again remove their clothes afterwards so they would not become tattered. They sat in the cave for 12 years. 12 years they are having this isolation, pure Torah. That's all they're doing is studying Torah and praying. They're not interacting with other human beings. And I would say, and I read this and I think, goodness, I can't study Torah without you guys. I mean, like, how do people study just two people? What would that do? If I pick one person for 12 years, that's all I did was study Torah with them. What would that do to us? We can talk about that in a minute. Elijah the prophet. This is why I taught Elijah last week, because he has this bit role this week. Elijah the prophet came and stood at the entrance to the cave. Entrance to the cave. There's something about the entry. It's like this liminal place. Liminal meaning not here, not there, right? It's like between here and there. Who informed Bar Yochai, Shimon Bar Yochai, that the emperor died and his decree has been abrogated. In other words, he can come out now. And Elijah says, who's gonna tell him? And I have so many questions about this story, and I'm hoping you'll help me along the way. Like, why doesn't he just tell them? Why does he stand outside and say, who's going to tell? Obviously loud enough so that Rabbi Shimon and his son can hear it, but he doesn't tell them directly. If you have thoughts on that, let me know. I'm going to leave that kind of in the air for right now, but feel free to put some thoughts in. So obviously they hear it and they emerged. They came out of the cave, Rabbi Shimon and his son, Rabbi Elazar. They saw people who were plowing and sowing, people living, doing life. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, and this is, you can feel the kind of disdain and judgment. They abandon eternal life and engage in temporal life. In other words, they're not studying Torah, they're just doing like daily living. This is terrible. And every place that they, Rabbi Shimon and his son Elazar, directed their eyes was immediately burned. In other words, their eyes, they were filled with such judgment and such passion that whatever they looked at burned. And for those of you who were last week, remember, God is not in the fire, right? God is not in the fire, God's in the still small voice, right? A divine voice emerged and said to them, did you emerge to destroy my world? Return to your cave. And it's interesting, it's your cave. It doesn't say the cave, it's like your cave. They again went and sat there for 12 months. Doesn't say for a year, it says for 12 months. And I wonder if that's like 1 month for every year. First they were there for 12 years, now they're there for 1 month per year. Like they have to do some kind of tikkun, some kind of repair for what they did. It doesn't tell us what they did. It just says they were there for 12 months. And I wonder, I'd love to have another midrashic, interpretive story about what happened during those 12 months. I'm just looking here, Laney. Oh, he said that outside the cave is not to not give away the hiding place. That's interesting, except for they don't have to hide anymore. So, because now they're free to come out. But maybe it's just, it's interesting, I have to think about that. Because we can assume Elijah knows they're in there. There's even an interpretation that says, I was reading a lot of commentary on this, and listen, Elijah was in there studying Torah with them every day for the last 12 years, which of course it doesn't say that, but that's the rabbinic imagination. Elijah's in there every day. Why doesn't he just tell them one time when he's in there? There's something like there's something like maybe Elijah doesn't want to take responsibility for them coming out. Like they have to do it on their own. They have to like make that decision on their own. But when they come out, they're not behaving particularly in a way that the divine voice wants them. Go back in. Sorry, you do not come out of this cave in order to destroy the world. That is not what I intend. Feel free to write in more comments if you have them, and I'll continue on the story. They said, this is Rabbi Shimon and his son, Rabbi Elazar. They've been in there for 12 months in this cave again. And they said, the judgment of the wicked in Gehenna lasts only for 12 months. Gehenna is, in the Jewish imagination, the place after we die where our souls are purified. And again, Judaism doesn't have like one way to believe about death. Whatever belief you have about what happens after we die is probably Jewish, other than eternal damnation. We don't have that. But pretty much everything else exists, and this is one of them. One of them is 12 months in Gehenna to kind of purify your soul before you move on to the next world, the next, again, this is more complicated and it's not precise. The reason we say, for those of you who know, we say Kaddish, the prayer for the dead, in the Ashkenazic tradition, you only do it for 11 months because the most amount of time a person could be in Gehenna is 12 months to do this purification. And then my loved one would not need the full 12 months. Therefore, we stop at 11 months. There's sort of like a way of saying, 11 is going to be enough. Sephardic tradition, I believe, is different. They stop and then they pick up again at the 12th month. If anybody knows the tradition, it's a little different, but the idea is the same. It's 12 months. And they're saying, listen, we're in this purgatory, as it were. We're in this place for 12 months. 12 months should be enough. We should be able to come out. And they're seeing this 12 months as sort of a purification time. And a divine voice emerged and said, emerge from your cave. So now they're getting permission to leave. So let's see if they've changed. They emerged. Everywhere that Rabbi Elazar would strike, Rabbi Shimon would heal. It appears that Rabbi Elazar still had this passion in his eyes. He would still destroy, but his father would heal, so that they kind of balanced each other out. It's interesting, and I love your thoughts on this too. Like, why is the son still striking? The father is able to heal. As some of you know, I don't like to bring texts that I fully understand because I feel like I don't teach as well, and I also it's kind of boring for me. These are real questions I'm asking you. I would love your insights. And if you've never seen these texts before, you've never studied before, I've said this before, and I mean this, you often have an advantage because you don't think you know what it means. So don't be shy about putting in your thoughts, like, oh, I've never thought about this before. I don't know anything. No, that's the opposite. And if you have studied it before, great, you have more background, so you can also bring something else. So everybody has something to contribute. If you have a thought, don't be shy about sharing it. All right, so Rabbi Shimon is healing, Rabbi Elazar is striking, but Rabbi Shimon is healing. And then Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi Elazar, my son, you and I suffice for the world. Unclear what that means, but he's trying to get his son to relax. It's enough. What we have, this kind of Torah knowledge, no, not everybody's going to have it. We've got it. It's enough. Is what he seems to be saying. It's okay. Everyone doesn't have to be us. Debbie writes, youth has more energy and passion. With age comes perspective. It very well might be that. And we need both the passion. I think I like this idea, we need both the passion and the perspective. Those two things have to come together. And actually, since you wrote that, Debbie, I'm thinking, maybe we need both of those guys. Now it's okay, because we have both the passion and the perspective. One alone is not going to work. Beth writes, I was more judgmental as a younger person. Yeah, I can relate to that. right? I miss those days when I knew things were so clear. it was, but I also had more energy to work on things. I believed I could do things that I don't, that now I'm like, I probably can't get that done. So I'm so in awe of youthful passion, because like, that's what gets things done. And I appreciate that. And, so this is the weighing we have to do. And so the story continues. This is my favorite part. As the sun was setting on Shabbat Eve, right? Shabbat's about to begin. They saw an elderly man who was holding 2 bundles of myrtle branches. And they have a nice smell, myrtle branches. And he's running at twilight. Shabbat's about to begin, and he's got these. Basically, he's got flowers for Shabbat. Something beautiful. And it's an old man. And I wonder. It could have been just a man or a person, but of course it's going to be a male person in these stories, right? But it could have just been a man. Why does it have to be an old man? He's an old man running at twilight. Actually, as I say that, he's running. Like, he's got the zeal, right? And he's got these 2 bundles of myrtle branches. And they said to him, "Why do you have these?" And he said, "In honor of Shabbat." And they said, "Well, isn't one enough?" And as I was reading this yesterday, I was noticing right before this, Rabbi Shimon said, "You and I are enough. It's 2." And now they say to him, "Why isn't 1 branch enough?" And the older man said, "Well, 1 is for where it says in the Torah, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy." That's in the book of Exodus and the 10 Commandments. And when the 10 Commandments are repeated in Deuteronomy, it says, observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy. So 1's for remember and 1's for observe. And Rabbi Shimon said to his son, "See how beloved the mitzvot, the commandments, are to the people of Israel." And at that point, both of their minds were put at ease. All right. Ashley, I love that this guy who didn't quite have enough time to prep, he has to go running. He's the one who sets their minds at ease. Yeah, I like that. Thank you. Thank you. That's a great comment. Right. We don't always know where our ease is going to come from. And so it's just like sort of this anonymous old guy running to bring these 2 bunches of myrtle for Shabbat. He puts their minds at ease, and he's got this. They smell Shabbat. This is a very embodied thing, the opposite of what they were doing in the cave. And I feel like this old man taught them. It's like there's different ways to do this. There's different ways to live in the world. There's different ways to be okay. And they had to learn that coming out of the cave, because they were in the cave just with each other. They didn't have, I sort of feel like we're all, who do you talk to when you're in isolation? Only a very small group of people. And if you think about our society today, who do we read, we're in our social media caves too. We only hear from certain perspectives. And Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar have to go out in the world and see other perspectives. And like, I was studying this with a friend of mine yesterday, Rabbi Nancy Flam. She says, don't force clarity. It's not inclusive. Don't try to decide what this is all going to mean when you come out, because it's not going to be, you can't force this. You just can't force it. Other thoughts, comments up till here? Feel free to type them in. I'm going to do the next section, but I'll come back to your comments if you have any. I know it just takes a few minutes sometimes to type. So now we're going to get often the story stops here, but I want to bring you to the next parts, because it gets more confusing and maybe more interesting. So Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, who was Rabbi Shimon's son-in-law, heard that they were out and went to greet them. He brought Rabbi Shimon into the bathhouse and began tending to his flesh. Remember, he's been in and out of, he hasn't seen sunlight all this time, and he was in sand for 12 years. We don't know about the 13th year, but his body is physically not well. And he saw that Rabbi Shimon had cracks in the skin on his body. He was crying. I'm not sure who the he is. and the tears fell from his eyes and caused Rabbi Shimon pain, right? Because he's got cracks on his body, and the salt from the tears is hurting him. I'm not sure which one of them is crying, but either way, it's a painful scene. And Rabbi Pinchas, the son-in-law, said to Rabbi Shimon, his father-in-law, "Woe is me that I have seen you like this. I can't believe I have to see this." And Rabbi Shimon said to him, "Ashrecha, happy are you that you have seen me like this. Because if you had not seen me like this, you would not have found in me this." Very strange. But there seems to be a consolation. Actually, and I want to thank Rabbi Tali Adler. I mentioned her name at the beginning. I heard her teach this a few months ago, and she said I am who I am now because of what I experienced. He's very accepting of his situation, and he can. This is the way it is. If I hadn't gone through this, I wouldn't be here at all. And so, thank you for just being here with me. And I don't need your pity. I just need your presence. And the Hebrew is, for those of you who know Hebrew, like the word kach, thus, this, is in there 4 times. It's like, this is the way it is. Bekach, 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 be kach. It's like, this is what it is. And Rabbi Shimon seems to be very okay. Like, this is what I've been through, and this has made me who I am. And you don't need to feel badly for me. I mean, Rabbi Pinchas had a whole different experience. Imagine what it was like being the son-in-law for 13 years, not knowing if your father-in-law and brother-in-law are alive in a cave I mean, everybody's having a different experience. And I wonder what was the old man's experience during the Romans were not particularly nice to anybody at the time. There was a lot of fear, a lot of people being, Rabbi Akiva, this is right after Rabbi Akiva was, and a number of other rabbis were martyred. It's not an easy time. Everyone's having a different experience. These guys, in a certain way, have it easier. They're in the cave the whole 13 years. They don't have to see, they don't have to try to, and food and water are being provided. So it's okay. It's also interesting, he says, if you had not seen me like this, you would not find in me this. There's a seeing that comes first and then a finding. And the in me, what's in him? And I think that's what the next paragraph is. I'm gonna talk about, and then I'll look at your comments. And what this last paragraph says, at first, and I don't know when the at first is, maybe like before the cave experience, when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai would raise a difficulty, I have a question about something they were studying, his son-in-law would respond, Rabbi Pinchas would respond with 12 answers. But ultimately, and maybe now after they've gone through this experience, if Rabbi Pinchas, the son-in-law, had a question, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had 24 answers. In other words, his mind became much more clear. And that's what he got out of this experience. You know, not something he would wish on anybody, but he accepted it. He accepted, okay, this is what I got out of this experience, and it's okay, kacha. We have in Hebrew this line, Ashrei ha'am shekacha lo. Happy is the people that are thus. And my friend, Rabbi Nancy Flam, says kacha lo means like thus. Like, we just accept. It's like you can accept, you can live with what is. That doesn't mean you don't work to make things better, but you also, on a personal level, it's like you're not in a constant state of fighting one's own demons internally. One accepts them and works through them, and doesn't feel like the need to be always wanting more, always wanting what isn't possible. All right, Margaret. Thank you, Margaret. I can depend on you to write a comment. I appreciate that. Maybe the effect of the cave environment had an involuntary limiting and intensifying effect on the psyche that needs time and healing. Yeah, I think we see that. They couldn't just come out with no preparation, no warning. The rabbi, and that might go, Lainey, to why Elisha doesn't say come out. It's like he knows he doesn't want he knows there's something more that needs, because he's been in the cave himself. Elijah knows you can't just come out and be changed. You need some time. But maybe they needed to come out, have that experience of being out, and go back in. Because if they hadn't come out in the first place, they wouldn't know that they needed to prepare themselves, right? And but Elijah knew how painful it was going to be, because he'd been through it himself. So this is sort of his way of doing it, but not doing it. I don't know. I'm just thinking here as we're talking. Okay, love to hear my thoughts about the 12s. Yeah, that's interesting. I've thought about that. Why 12? You know, maybe because of the 12 months in a year. The numbers in a lot of these stories are very much about, you know, prototype numbers. So maybe this is also the 12 months in Gehenna. You know, these numbers, like it takes 12 months to purify. I don't know if anybody has other thoughts. That's an interesting question. I wonder if this has anything, if this is related to the man carrying the 2 bundles earlier. If this, meaning what's the this? The 12 and the 2, I don't know. Just put a little bit more in there about what the this is you're referring to, Baya. Any other thoughts here about our friend here? I think it's so interesting how many times there's these stories about caves, and Elijah, and entrance to the cave, and coming out of caves. We have others. First he has 12 and then 24. Yes, so that doubles it. Yes, thank you, Baya. I see what you're saying. That's the 2. Right, not just 1 bundle of myrtles, but 2 bundles of myrtles, like not just 12, 24. Yeah, nice, very nice, thank you. I mean, these are all, they're all telling us, first of all, change doesn't happen quickly. These experiences of being in a cave, whatever the cave metaphor is for you, they're profound, and you can't just rush, you know, can't just walk right out and just renew life. It's not going to be the same. And it's gonna takes time, and people are going to process differently, and it's giving us permission for that. I want to turn to the next text, and the idea of putting these 2 texts together is, I want to give credit to Rabbi Naama Kelman in Israel. She did a class a while ago that I took, and I thought it was just brilliant to put these 2 texts together. I never would have thought of it. This is a text about what the rabbis thought was happening to a fetus in its mother's womb. Another cave, as it were, right? And I've seen this text before, and there's others that are related to this I'll tell you about if we have time. But it's really a remarkable text. So what does it mean to come into the world from the womb? I mean, talk about a shock to the system. Wow, you're in this nice, safe little womb, and then you're out in the world, and you have to breathe, you have to eat, you have to, like, your body, you know, you have to have your diapers changed, you have to sleep. I mean, it's like, what? And of course they can't talk and tell you anything. So this is what the rabbis say. And again, I want to just remind you, this is not about facts. You know, go with the feelings, go with the flow here. Also, they have the rabbinic art form is to, when they say things that they know are a little bit kind of like, you're really going to believe this? They'll find a verse in the Bible to prove it. Now, they'll take that verse out of context, but it's, if they can find a verse to hang their comment on, as it were, then you go with the flow, and just see it as an art form. That's what I just recommend you see it as art. They are so brilliant and so creative that they can find a verse to prove things, as it were. Enjoy. All right, so Rabbi Simlay taught, to what is a fetus in its mother's womb comparable? It's like a folded notebook, and it rests with its hands on its 2 sides of its head at the temples, its 2 arms on its 2 knees, its 2 heels on its 2 buttocks, and its head rests between its knees, and its mouth is closed, and the umbilicus is open. And it eats from what the mother eats, and it drinks from what its mother drinks, and it does not emit excrement, lest it kill its mother. But once it emerges into the airspace of the world, the closed limb, meaning the mouth, has to open, and the open limb, meaning the umbilicus, it has to close. Otherwise, it cannot live for even 1 hour. The body needs exactly, you go out of the womb and you need to talk about an adjustment. You can't do out of the womb what you did in the womb. There's a metaphor, right? When we go back and out of the world, we have to realize that what maybe sustained us in our cave will not sustain us outside of our cave. And what is it? What does that mean? What does that mean for each one of us? And then now it's going to, so that's the body has to make this change. And now it's going to talk about the soul, the inner life. And a candle is lit for it, but we're back into the womb now. A candle is lit for this fetus above its head, and the fetus gazes from one end of the world to the other. And now here's the proof text, right? The proof quote. When God's lamp shined above my head, and by God's light I walked through darkness. This is like, oh, this must be referring to in the womb. I mean, that's creative. I just think that's a creative way to use that verse. And don't wonder, they say, how it's possible. You might say, how can you see from one end of the world to the other inside a womb? Well, when you sleep, you're in one location. And in a dream, you can be in a place as far away as Spain, which must have been, for them, very far away. So we know that you can be in one place and see something else. Okay. And there are no days more when a person is more in a blissful state than those days. What could be better when you're in the womb? And then I'm going to skip the proof text because it gets complicated, but again, they're beautiful proofs. And what happens when you're in the womb? A fetus is taught the entire Torah while in the womb. And Torah here, they use the word Torah meaning knowledge. All the knowledge, that one needs to know, one learns. I mean, they mean it also literally as Torah, but they mean it as more than Torah. Everything you need to know, you learn in the womb. And then again, we have some more proof texts. I want to tell you that other midrashim, other rabbinic interpretations and other texts, I couldn't find the English for them, but I just could tell you, there's ones that would say, the soul doesn't want to go into the womb. Against its will, it goes into this, as I say, a stinking drop, it says. You don't want to go there. And then when it's time to be born, you don't want to be born. And then when it's time to die, you don't want to die. You never want to leave the cave, whatever cave you're in. And that's just the way it's going to be. And it says, there's one that says that you're taken on when you're in the womb, you're taken on a journey to see all the places you're going to be in your lifetime. So you can see what's lying ahead. You're also taken to heaven, and you see what says. This is what happens if you live a righteous life, and you're taken to hell. What we call, there's different words for this in Hebrew, but you're taken to the other world, the other side. This is what happens if you don't live a righteous life. And you're given all these warnings, you're given all this preparation. You're taught everything you need to know. You're seeing everything you need to see, everything you need, and all the warnings you need, all the preparation that you need, it happens in the womb. It's very different than what we see per Rabbi Shimon. You get everything you need in the womb to prepare you to enter the world. And then it says, once the fetus emerges into the airspace of the world, an angel comes and slaps it on its mouth, causing it to forget the entire Torah. You forget everything. And that's why, according to Jewish tradition, you have this little indentation here. That's where the angel touched you. There's others that the angel touches you. And that's what this indentation, that's a reminder that you did know everything. And what do? You spend your whole life relearning. You ever go like, I'm sure I knew that somewhere before. Well, that's because you learned it in the womb, right? It's like, there is something psychological as an educator. I find this fascinating that we actually already know everything we need to know. We just need to relearn it. And that's the return in a certain way. And what else happens before you leave the womb? We're getting close on time, so I'm going to finish this up quickly and take your notes. A fetus, this is the next paragraph. A fetus does not leave the womb until the angels administer an oath to it. Okay, and I'm going to skip the proof text and go to the final paragraph. What is the oath that the angels administer to the fetus? What is it? What do you make the fetus promise? This is what you have to promise. Be righteous and do not be wicked. And even if the entire world says to you, you are righteous, consider yourself wicked. Now, I want to be careful about that because I don't think that's saying like have a bad self-image. I think what that's saying is you're never going to be done. You're never going to be fully righteous. Life will always be unfolding. And if people, no matter what people tell you, yeah, you're the best person in the world, whatever, you know in your heart, you've still got work to do. Never stop the work. You're never going to be done. And that's the nature of it. That's the nature of it. Don't buy into this like, why am I not done? Okay, now I know what to do. You know, yeah, for today I know what to do. For this moment I know, but tomorrow it might be different. And then it's also know that the Holy One, Blessed One, is pure, and the Holy One's ministers are pure, and the soul that the Holy One gave you is pure. In other words, purity does exist, and it's in your soul, and that soul is connected to something bigger than you. If you don't believe in God, you know, I think we all know there's something bigger than any one of us, whatever you want to call that. Some people call it God, some people call it the mystery, whatever you want to call it. There's something bigger than us, and we're connected to it, and it's pure, right? We start pure. This is what we're returning. This is what tshuva is. This is what the return is. We do have something to return to. We believe that we came into this world pure. And if you don't, you know, it's your job to preserve it in this purity, this tahara. I mean, this is another conversation, what's purity mean? But it's clearly something positive and to be embraced. And we all have it, because we all have a neshama, in the soul. And that actually can't be, according to the mystical tradition, that aspect of our soul is always pure. We may not access it, but it's always there. It's always in us. And that's, you know, that's the difference between these two texts. I think when Rabbi Shimon, he didn't have any warning. He didn't have any preparation. There was no oath ahead of time. When you come out, this is what you're going to need to do. This is what you're going to need to think about. I think we're all in a place of trying to figure, you know, we are trying to prepare. I mean, as I said last week, I have such rahmana, such compassion on the people who are trying to help prepare us and have to make decisions for the community. But they don't know either. And so we should take care of each other in that way. And whatever decisions they make, they have to be willing to make a new decision. And same with all of us as individuals. Invitations I accepted 2 weeks ago, I'm now thinking, was that a good idea? 2 weeks ago, it seemed fine. I'm just going to look at the comments, because the comments are the best part for me. So Monty, like the first story, after the loss of the temple and being a fugitive with his son, Rabbi Shimon felt happy in his twilight years that his son could discover shared meaning outside in the world. The son is brought out of a safe, enclosed, nurturing space into the world. Yeah. I'm just rereading this. Right, you can't keep your son in that womb in the cave the whole time. You got to bring him out into the world. And then, actually, Monty, I'm reading this, I'm thinking, you know, he does then nurture his son. I mean, his son is an adult at this point, but still, he guides his son. He doesn't just. They're not equals. He has a role to play with his son, which is interesting. I don't know if I got fully what your comment is, so if I didn't fully get it, send me another note. I mean, feel happy or unmute. I can see you, so if there's more you want to say. Other thoughts on this? I'm just so happy. Now I can see the full screen. I'm just looking to see you, see your faces. Other thoughts, comments?
Beth?
Yes, hi, Maria.
Hi. So I am so curious when I read the part about the baby being born in sin because all of the knowledge of the Torah, once they're born, is taken away. Is that correct?
No, oh, actually, I skipped that part. But I think what that means is that part, it's they're susceptible to sin because you forget. And it's sin crouches at the door is the proof text, which is what God says to Cain when Cain, in Cain and Abel's story, when Cain is very upset because Abel's offering was accepted and Cain's wasn't. And God says, take it easy. If you don't get a hold of your emotions here, sin crouches at the door. Like you have a decision to make. And so I think that's what those proof texts mean.
So I'm wondering, in Christian Judeo tradition, I was curious to see that concept of sin at birth, because in Christian tradition, children are born with original sin on their soul.
Yeah, no, so we don't have that.
So it's different entirely.
Yeah, at least that's my understanding. That's my understanding. We are pure. Yeah. You know, and we have choices to make once we're in the world. Yeah. Yeah, we can choose to sin. We have that potential. And this is actually a much longer conversation because I think theologically this is a difference. But there's also, I mean, there's also, you know, Eve, you know, there's, you know, so it's complicated. But this view is we all have a neshama that's pure. We all have a soul that's pure. Right. It's and you can't. There's nothing you can do to destroy your soul. The neshama. There's other aspects of our soul that we can. There's other words like nefesh that you can dirty up, but not the neshama. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. And I see Rabbi Laura's text is particularly special, having an infant son who was recently in the womb. Yes, right. I have a new grandson, right? And this and anybody who's been with a brand new baby, it's like you just know they have so much wisdom, but they don't have language yet. They don't, and this is, but they can teach it. We have to listen in a different way, and it's there for us. And I was thinking the other day, like my grandson is just, he's always moving. You know, his body is always moving. It's like, what does it mean? What's it feel like to be in a body? You know, it's like, you got to figure this out. He's got to figure out, what does a body do? Right. I mean, and I think we're all still figuring it. And then we stopped doing that. We stopped, you know, we put ourselves in the sand up till here, and we put everything in our head, and we forget, you know, we're still in a body. And this coming out of the cave for all of us, it's going to be slow. It's going to be gradual. For some people, it's going to be easier than for others. We have to be careful not to be Rabbi Shimon and judge the people who are doing it differently. I think the womb metaphor is actually a much healthier metaphor. Like, you're nurtured, we nurture each other. I mean, we're not going to be nurtured. We're not going to be in the womb, right? That's just not happening. You know, we can't be nurtured in that way, but we can metaphorically nurture each other as we're coming out, or as we stay in. There's lots to do. There's a reason why you're in this womb for 9 months. There's a reason why they had to spend another 12 months back in there. There's time. It takes time. So can we use that time to support each other? And Susan, I'll let you have the last word. There's also so much wonder to discover in the world as a new grandparent as well. Yeah. Yeah, we're taught to celebrate and see everything in such a joyful way. They teach us that. They're reminding us of that. And Jim, a beautiful set of teachings. Indeed, we each have knowledge and purity, but need to connect to the world and others to understand who and how we are. Yes, we each have a different role to play. You won't be me, and I won't be you, and that's what's beautiful. As forget who said this. I think it might be Parker Palmer said, you know, the other person is not a, what's the word? An unimproved version of me. or a failed version of me. The other person's not a failed version of me, right? So, but I can learn from you. I can't be my full person without you. And I think that's part of what these teachings teach. And I thank you all. I got some new insights. I appreciate it. And I welcome if you want to send me emails with other thoughts, I welcome them. And I hope to see you next week. And thank you. And thank you to my colleagues for help with the recording and all the technical stuff.